Yeah.
Pietro, with your experience, of course, you were in-house at the IRS. We would
Yeah.
love your insight. You
Yeah.
walk to the mailbox after a day of work and you see a letter from the
Yeah.
IRS. I don't care if it's a check. I
Right.
don't care if it's just an innocuous
You feel it
notice.
here, right?
You are filled with dread
Yes.
and contempt
Yes.
and fear.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosabianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, have you realized how there are two sectors that always get the short end of the stick? It's attorneys and tax. Now, I don't think attorneys and tax are evil by definition, but I think what happens is when something is complex or difficult to understand, it becomes elusive. And when something is elusive, it develops a negative connotation. Today, we end that because today on the podcast, we have L'Avvocato Pietro Canestrelli. He has a wonderful bedside manner. He's an attorney with an LLM. And Matt, an attorney with an LLM is like comparing the Batmobile from 1962, Adam West, to the Batmobile from the last movie. I mean, the guy's a super attorney, and he worked with the IRS, so he's going to be able to lift the hood and let us know how things really happen in DC or tend to not happen.
Yeah.
So, Pietro, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm
Tell us,
very
what is
excited.
a day in the life of Pietro like?
Day in the life of Pietro is managing my team, and we have 4 legal teams that work for me, tax attorneys and legal assistants, helping taxpayers avoid the giant iceberg crash of taxes, whether it's the IRS or the California taxing authorities. Every business owner needs to know that there is giant icebergs out there and you could crash into them and not even see them. And we help taxpayers both at the planning stage, proactive planning, to help them, minimize their taxes, and also we help taxpayers when they get into trouble with the IRS, when they get that audit notice, when they get that liability bill that says, guess what, you owe us $200,000. How are you going to pay that? Helping taxpayers daily is what I love to do. And I do have to say one thing about tax attorneys. Tax attorneys are the best attorneys because not only we're the only attorneys that not only save your bacon from the taxing authorities, do that litigation work, but we could actually save you taxes and bring value even when you don't have a tax issue. So we have, and also we have an enormously complex body of law that we have to know about. So estate planning attorneys, family law attorneys, they don't have to have that level of expertise that we do. And I always say tax attorneys are the best attorneys. We're your best friend.
No, listen, I love it. How much is it bothering you that all these TikTokers are giving tax advice these days?
It doesn't bother me. I think it's good to have a conversation. Most of it is wrong. The one that gets me, I see over and over again is, I live in California, but what I do is I go over to Nevada and I register my car there and then I bring it back. And so much less taxes than in California. Well, that's illegal. And guess what? The California, authorities are looking for this. And when they fine you, you owe a use tax on that vehicle. You signed your tax return, your income tax return, that under penalty of perjury, you don't have any vehicle that you're using in California. So guess what? They're going to nab you. They're going to put a ton of penalties on top of you. So yeah, I see that one and I'm like, oh my God, please don't tell people this.
I mean,
Don't encourage them.
It's running rampant. I mean, we even see it in our industry.
Sure.
Hey, just go set up an LLC, get business credit, get a credit card,
Right.
go buy yourself a Lamborghini. I
Right.
think everybody forgets they actually got to pay that credit card off, or
Yeah.
it's fraud.
Yeah.
You know?
It's encouraging fraud, basically.
Yeah.
And then there's the lower level type. We don't know what we're really doing, but we're just parroting. Like, oh, if you have a business, you should be an S corporation. Everyone should be an S corporation. No, let's look at your business and see what you're going to do in it and see what the basket of assets are going to be. And then we'll make the decision and what state you're going to be in. And then we'll make the decision of what type of entity it is. It's not a one size fits all world. So stop telling people that.
No, listen, I love your business model, and I'll tell you why. Really simple. You're going to help me prepare. You're going to help me look forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can mitigate our taxes for the end of the year.
Yep.
And guess what? You're going to stick up for me if something goes wrong and the IRS don't like it. Where a normal CPA kind of backs off and they give it little audit protection, but not full audit protection. They'd have us hire you anyway.
Right.
So why not from the jump?
They want to do their audit protection is if I did something wrong on the return, I'm going to correct that during the audit. Our audit protection is more about we're going to protect the positions you took versus, if there is something incorrect on the computations on the return. So it's a completely different world. A CPA is very interested in doing tax returns. They do that remarkably well. They don't want any audits, so they don't want anything aggressive, and they don't want to do anything they don't understand on the return because they want you coming back every single year. And if you pop an audit, usually someone's going to look for a new CPA.
But let's talk about that for a second, because we see, going through full financial documents, we see tax returns all the time.
Right.
Right. So we're going through them. We ask questions, obviously. And I'm like, why did you do this? And they're like, my CPA told me to do it. Okay. Yeah. But now the CPA gave them a tax strategy that they could use. Right. And then, 2 years later, let's say that audit comes up. That CPA sometimes is nowhere to be found.
That's true.
So it's not the business owner that's wrong. They're listening to somebody else's advice that's supposed to be a professional in that area.
Right.
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 But who's in trouble then? Is the CPA on the hook for bad advice?
Yeah.
Or is
CPA is on the hook? Okay. The taxpayer is on the hook from the IRS, meaning the taxpayer owes the penalties, the taxes, the penalties, the interest. The IRS is going to collect that from the taxpayer. So they're on the hook from that. The CPA is on the hook, but only for penalties and interest related to penalties, and also the cost of litigating it, our costs, all right, the tax attorney's costs. They're not on the hook for the taxes, because the way the IRS views it, or I guess courts have viewed it, is the taxes were owed anyway.
All right? Makes sense. That's equitable.
So when you're signing that tax return, you're signing a penalty against perjury statement that says, I have read this and I understand it and everything about it and I agree to it. This is correct. The CPA is not signing that. The CPA is saying, I prepared this. So yeah, the taxpayer is on the hook. Now, most preparers have errors and omissions insurance, and many times, we go to the preparer and say, "You think you messed up here," and it's obviously negligence. Most times, no, but many times there is negligence on the part of the preparer, and they understand it, and they usually get their insurance, or they pay themselves so they don't have to make a claim against the insurance. So yeah, having a good CPA preparer is super important in taxes.
So, I like to use real life examples here. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's what we like our sure. audience listens, we say things. So I'll give you an example. I have a client right now that their CPA says that they filed a tax return from 2022.
Mm-hmm.
right? It's their personal side. The business was accepted, but they can't get a straight answer out of the CPA. They can't get a straight answer out of the IRS. And 2022, right,
Right.
is the CPA saying it's filed. The IRS is saying that they don't have it. What does somebody like that do? Where do they go?
That means it was not filed. If the IRS does not have it, it is officially not filed. That means that the CPA, if there is kind of a you could prove the chain. I've given you the green light to electronically file this, or please file the paper return. If you could show that chain, then the CPA is responsible to the late filing penalty that's being assessed against the taxpayer, the late paying penalty, if that's involved. If it is not on your IRS account transcript, tax account transcript, it did not happen. All right. Now, sometimes you could get that fixed if you have proof, there was a confirmation of filing electronically, or you have certified mail receipt for the paper file. If you could show that to the IRS and say what happened here, then maybe you could get that reversed, and the transcript could be fixed. But if not, a super rare. What usually happens is the CPA says, "Yeah, I filed it." He didn't really file it. He thought he filed it, but it really didn't get filed. Remember, most of
Yeah,
their
no,
business happens in 2 months. You
yeah,
know,
in this particular client's case, he went back to the CPA. The CPA said they refiled it, right? And this is just a really
yeah.
weird situation because the client's waiting on a refund too.
Oh, that's particularly bad.
Yeah.
And
So,
sometimes what happens is sometimes they'll file a personal return, and one of the digits on the Social Security number will be off, or the EIN for businesses
mhm,
will be off, and that's not filed. The IRS is not going to correct that. That's
yeah.
considered not a return filed. So they probably owe that client interest on the refund. What I hope you do have there is a 3-year statute, meaning you have to file a return within 3 years of the original return date, or you don't get a refund. The refund is kept at that point. So hopefully that didn't happen. CPAs are not set up they do compliance, which are returns and that sort of thing, but they're not set up to do controversy. They're not set up to make those persistent calls to the IRS, know what numbers to call, push, 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 get the information, talk, send the fax over the documents, all that sort of stuff. They're not set up to do that. They're set up to do returns. So it's always better, and we have a lot of referral partners that are preparers that they don't want to do this to begin with, and they just shift it over to us when something like this happens. Yeah.
Pietro, with your experience, of course, you were in-house at the IRS. We would
Yeah.
love your insight. You
Yeah.
walk to the mailbox after a day of work and you see a letter from the IRS.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a check.
Right.
I don't care if it's just an innocuous
You
notice.
feel it here, right?
You are filled with dread
Yes.
and contempt
Yes.
and fear.
Right.
Why does the IRS maintain this draconian approach in communicating and dealing with the taxpayer? Why couldn't it be a little bit more magnanimous and more friendly?
I did spend 6 years as an IRS attorney in Washington, D.C., and that's in my book. And I was depressed, severely depressed after a year because of two things. One is we're not interested in helping people, and that was kind of my idea as an attorney. I'm going to help a lot of people, and I'm going to have clients, and they're going to be happy. You don't do that as a government attorney. You bring misery and dread to people, and it's not a fun feeling. So part of it is just being in the government, the way the government works. The way the government works is you can't have everyone has to do the things the exact same way. So you have a lowest common denominator approach, meaning these are all, these are the letters we have to issue, and this is the wording we have to do, and this is how you have to treat everyone. You can't give slack unless there is an exception, and they're bringing that up for you. So yeah, and another part is they don't they don't they have no accountability. The people that work for the IRS, okay, they really don't. They cannot be fired. They cannot be even reprimanded. I mean, in theory they can, but I was there for 6 years. I asked every person I could, and this is the national office in Washington, D.C., the big one on Constitution Avenue. I asked everyone I ever met there, did you ever hear of anyone getting fired? No one no one had even heard of someone getting fired. The one story I heard, and it was pretty consistent, was somebody threatened their supervisor with a knife. And they said, we're not going to fire you, but we're going to give you 6 months to find another job. And then if you're still here after 6 months, we are going to start the process to try to terminate you. And the person found another job. One story I always love to tell is I work for a division, and there's probably 80 attorneys in this division. It's pastors and special industries. And the head of this division had his own secretary, and she retired after 40 years. And her replacement had to be the next person with seniority, and that was Miss Hattie. And Miss Hattie was the sweetest old lady you ever met, in your life. But she had no, she had, she didn't want to, she had no way she was going to actually do the job. She wasn't interested in actually doing the job. Now, she got the job, and her job was answering probably a dozen phone calls a day and talking to people and keeping the head of the division's calendar, all right, on paper, of course, not on a computer, writing it on a paper. And this is, 2005. She had she didn't want to do that job. She wasn't interested in actually doing the job. So they had to get a secretary from each of the branches and rotate that person in, sit next to Miss Hattie, and do the job that Miss Hattie is supposed to be doing, while Miss Hattie sat there and read her books. She read her romance novels. And the amazing thing about this is there was no discussion. There was no, maybe we should get somebody else, or maybe we should ask Miss Hattie to do her job. Nothing like this. This is like par for the course. Of course, Miss Hattie's not going to do her
But Pietro,
job.
is there some validity to a tax attorney working at the IRS, similar to, let's say, a defense attorney working at the U.S. Attorney General's office or the DA's office?
Definitely.
Okay, so it's a good place for you to sharpen your teeth.
Yes. For attorneys, you learn the code, you learn the procedures, you learn how the IRS works, how they look at cases, how they, because they're not going to do the work for the taxpayer. There are all sorts of ways to fight for your rights as a taxpayer, but the IRS is not going to do that for you. They're not going to tell you what to do. So working there, you learn what a taxpayer should be doing, but you're not allowed to tell them. Your job is to assess taxes, not to get them off. Now, if they bring up these arguments and these procedures, you can accept them, but it's up to them to figure that out. So yeah, it was it was a great learning of the tax code for sure.
Now, Pietro, what's this role that I hear at the IRS, an advocate?
Yeah.
Is that like a politically correct way of calming the waters, or do they have a real purpose at the
They
IRS?
have a real purpose. The Taxpayer Advocate Service (TAS) is a very powerful tool for taxpayers, and it helps in situations where nobody knows, especially when nobody knows to seem to know what's going on. The IRS doesn't seem to know what's going on. The taxpayer doesn't seem to go on. They will kind of say, time out, let's look at this. And it's particularly good where you have like a collections case. Somebody owes a great deal of money, but they're saying, wait a minute, I paid it, or this happened, or that happened, and the IRS and the taxpayer don't seem to be on the same page. The advocacy office, but you have to do the procedure correctly and make sure it gets to the person, and you're presenting it the right way. Could say, timeout, we're not going to levy his bank accounts. Let's look at this. And they do have a certain ability to cut through the red tape and say, well, let's do this. This is what seems to be going on. So it is a powerful weapon for taxpayers. Not enough taxpayers take advantage. We have enormous amount of rights as taxpayers in this country. The problem is people don't take an advantage of them because they are complicated. They are complicated procedures.
On that note,
the
help
tax
us
code
understand.
is so complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt, I'm
Itself.
curious.
How are you
Yeah,
supposed
I'm
to know?
curious. How do we understand how the sausage is made, right? So let's say Congress comes across some new amendments to the tax code,
Right.
the big beautiful bill, for example,
Yeah.
right? And you've got thousands of people working at the IRS.
Right.
How are they made to know what all the updates are? Is the internal IRS software just updated automatically? Like how are they educating the IRS agents
So
to be able to communicate with the new taxpayer laws?
So the IRS and especially the national office that I worked in is in charge of what is called published guidance, and that is, unlike litigation, and there's a lot of attorneys that do tax court litigations in the IRS. The published guidance people look at new code provisions. They divvy it out among the different branches, and each branch has a certain code sections that they're in charge of. And Treasury and the IRS determine what type of guidance we need. Do we need regulations on this? Do we need other lower forms of guidance? Just a revenue procedure, or a notice. And it's up to people like that was kind of my job. You get a project, explain this new tax provision in a notice, or explain it in a regulation. And that's when the fun begins, because you really have not one, not two, but probably 20 tax attorneys involved at multiple supervisory levels to try to figure out how you interpret a particular code provision. And usually through the process, you kind of try to shrink the opportunities for taxpayers as much as possible. Meaning, if a code says, something along the lines of, we're going to give everyone this 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 new tax credit, or all businesses this tax credit. The IRS is, well, let's define businesses. And let's try to narrow the scope as much as possible in our published guidance, because they're really giving a floor, meaning their published guidance they're held to. Anything the IRS publishes, a court will say, well, that's your published guidance, so you have to stick to those rules. Unless it's a regulation, and there's been a Supreme Court case that kind of changes this too. Unless it's a regulation, it's not really law. It's an interpretation of the code of the law. So if there is a revenue procedure or something or a notice, that is the IRS's interpretation. A court doesn't have to agree with that, right? If it's a regulation, and I don't want to get too deep down the rabbit hole, but it does have a lot more weight, a regulation. It used to be treated as actual law, a correctly issued regulation. That's changed in a recent Supreme Court case, but we don't know. I would still treat regulations as laws, right? So it's just a group of attorneys that go back and forth and figure out the correct wording, and they make the decisions on who gets the credit and who doesn't get the credit through the bureaucracy.
So Pietro, tell us about the book.
The book, yes, America's Tax Defender: Stories of Taxpayers Who Fought the IRS and Won, and it really looks at my 6 years at the IRS as an attorney. There it is on Amazon. It's on sale and everything. And it looks at my time at the IRS and how they do things in contrast to my private practice. My law firm is now 10 years old. I started private practice before that, but working for other people. My firm is kind of, and I made this conscious decision as far as firm culture to be kind of the opposite of the IRS. Our firm culture is we practice law with passion and compassion, educating and advocating for our tax clients so they could sleep at night. We believe that people are the most important thing about a case. Our clients are not just numbers. They are people that are scared. They are people that are embarrassed and humiliated by, owing a great deal of tax. There are people that are mad that they're being audited by the IRS, and we believe in taking care of that person, meaning advocating but educating them, letting them know what laws the IRS is trying to hit them with, what penalties, what they did wrong, what they did right. We want to take them by the hand and walk them through this because we know it's a really scary time of their life. A business can be destroyed by an audit. An individual can have their economic future destroyed by, not correctly paying their taxes in a couple years. And a lot of our clients are business owners that don't understand taxes, and then they get audited, and then sometimes they get destroyed. I mean, I've seen so many times where a California sales tax audit destroys a mom and pop shop. I mean, literally destroys them in that the business has to close down because they owe hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales tax, and they're personally responsible. So they have to kind of flee California after their business shuts down. I've seen that too many times. So we believe in the client, and there's all sorts of funny anecdotes about the IRS, the Miss Hattie stories in there, all sorts of stories about just how things work. Like I said, I hated it, but government attorneys get paid very well, especially out of law school. I mean, it was a great job. I'm very thankful that I got it, but oh my God, I hated it. I was there for 6 years. The people are fine. The people are normal. IRS agents are normal human beings. They're not evil. They don't take any glee in this system. It's just
Sure.
the
No, but
system.
Pietro, a business owner also has to do a cost benefit analysis
Yeah.
because, like you mentioned earlier, there is a subjective nature to some of these incidents.
yeah.
Like, I'm not talking about the business owner that refuses to pay their 941s
Right.
and owes $500,000. I mean,
Right.
that's different. That's egregious. I'm talking about a subjective, innocent filing
Right.
or deduction, and then you're faced with spending tens of thousands of dollars, and those tax attorneys deserve every penny.
Yeah.
But do you say I'm going to invest another 100, 200, 300,000 to defend myself? You're at a point where it might as well just pay the bill and move on. It's not worth the fight.
There is a cost benefit analysis. I've never had $100,000 case though. I'd like to have those. But most of our fees for defending that audit run $10,000-$20,000 to get us a good resolution, and we've more than made up in the taxes saved historically by investing in a tax attorney. But yeah, if you owe $5,000, it's probably not worth bringing in a tax attorney. It probably, you could DIY it, or you could just pay the taxes. But there are people that shockingly owe hundreds of thousands of dollars that are like blue collar guys. And what usually happens to these guys is it's not the taxes, it's something happened in their life. They got divorced, they have a substance abuse issue, and it's 99% men. Women are rarely in this category because they're much more law abiding, and they usually don't go down the drain like men do. But a lot of men just hit that life iceberg. Something happened, and they just give up. They stop filing their returns. They try to work under the table, and then 5 years later, they want their life back, but they owe $150,000 to the IRS. And it's usually they have a fiance or something, and she wants to marry her man. She doesn't want to marry his tax bill, and she drags him to our office, and we fix the problem. There's one example in a book where he was kind of a prominent businessman in the area, and he became a meth addict. It started off slowly, and then it took over his life. And he went underground for almost a decade, and the franchise tax board was saying, hey, you owe us, it started out as $50,000, and it grew to hundreds of thousands of dollars, though he did try to make payments. And, he didn't see he couldn't get a job. He felt, why should I get a job? They're just going to take half my paycheck. So we helped him, and it turned out the FTP was completely wrong. He did not owe this. And we actually got him a refund for a lot of the money he paid in. So people are scared. IRS uses this. It's not that they consciously use this, but they know that they have the advantage. In an audit, that auditor has done hundreds of audits. She knows exactly what to ask you. She knows exactly what she's looking for. She knows the questions to ask, so you answer in a way that incriminates you. Not really, it's not a crime, but you give away the case. So you come into their office, you want to please her, you want to get out as quickly as possible. She knows this. So she's a expert at this because she's been doing it for so long, and you have no clue what you've walked into. So kind of a good idea would be to get a representative and walk in there with you, or go by themselves in there with you instead, right?
Yeah, 100%. Don't go in alone. Hire a professional to go in with you.
It's funny because when you become an IRS employee, there's a law that says you have to be audited. So I had started a month or two before, and I had to go into a local Virginia office and get audited. And it was I think Congress did that about 40 years ago. They're like, hey. So it was a very uncomfortable, even though I was an IRS employee, it was extremely uncomfortable. She was all like,
I guess they want to make certain the cobbler doesn't have holes in his shoes.
She's looking at my bank statements and saying, hey, she didn't say, hey. Well, she said, you got $15,000 in October, and you got another $15,000 in January, and according to the statement, I don't see where you reported that. And I was like, oh my God, I I have no idea what that is. What could that possibly be? I was like, what happened? Where was that 15,000? And my mind was like, well, it was my student loan. It's not
Okay.
taxable. Student loan, it's debt. And I got those disbursements, but I had no clue. And I'm supposed to be an attorney I was an attorney at that, but a newly minted attorney. But I was like, oh my God, I owe taxes. How are we going to afford to pay this? Just come out of law school where I'm making no money, and we had 3 kids, and it was like, oh my God, this is going to be terrible. How am I going to tell my wife? And some people never tell their spouse, or they
that's
hire us to tell their spouse what's going on.
That's the thing, though, right? When you're a business owner, you're looking forward, you're moving, right?
Yeah.
If you ask me what I did 3 months ago, let
Right.
alone 3 years ago, I can't tell you. There's money flowing every which way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, good
So-
accounting, good bookkeeping is extremely helpful in an audit.
100%. I agree.
I just did a case where I was called as a witness for a memorandum I had written literally 12 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I had to remember what was going on in that memo. And I'm like, I was like, I have I don't remember on this particular, but I can give testimony on how we handled these memos at that period. It's when I worked for a different firm. 13 years ago, you're supposed to remember what's going on. You're right. 2 years ago, you're supposed to remember what's going on. Keep good records. And some people, the question is, how long should I keep records? I think my personal view, and nowadays we have the capacity, the capability to do this. You keep business records forever. There's no reason why you can't keep it in a cloud. It's not that huge of a file. Keep them forever. Never destroy them. You never know if you have to, figure out a cost basis of an asset. You never know if there is an NOL, or there are reasons. Yeah, the IRS in theory could only go back 3 years on an audit, but you may need information from something from 10 years ago. And there is no reason nowadays that everything's electronic anyway. Don't destroy any of these records. Don't dump them. Just keep them forever as long as the business is running.
I love that advice. Pedro, thank you so much for being here.
Oh.
We really appreciate your time. Can you tell everybody where they can find you on the
Yeah.
socials or your website?
Yeah. If you go on Facebook or any of the socials and look for my name, search my name, I kind of have a unique name, Pietro Canestrelli, you will find me. My website is it's ietaxattorney.com. That is my website, but I do a lot of really good informational posting on Facebook and all the social media. I'm old, so I say Facebook, but all the social, it's on all the platforms. You just look. You could either go for my website, and we have a library of them, or look at the look. There I am, and should have all my postings. Oh, that's in Spanish. Very nice. There I am. So I try to do one of these a day, and I give a lot of tax information, and you could look at them by category. If you have an audit, if you're looking at a tax planning, if you're looking at this and that, there is a video out there. There's hundreds of videos. There is a video that's going to help you.
Pietro, thank you so much. Everybody, that's a wrap. The Liquid Lunch Project. We'll catch you on the next episode.
All right.
Let's go!